Stranded on a deep space mining vessel encased in glass 2 miles under the sea or locked up in a decaying bayou manor, there are games where the initial setup is as simple as you are trapped somewhere and you've just got to find a way out. Of course, along the way, you'll be solving problems and puzzles, helping out a varied cast of characters, and most importantly, learning about the place you find yourself in and how it wound up in its current dilapidated state. Games like this are some of my all-time favorites, and I wanted to highlight 3 that have always worked really well for me on this specific level: Bioshock, Resident Evil 7, and Dead Space. Now, there's gonna be some big spoilers for all 3, but if you're okay with that, then come join me on a brief journey through some games that I think execute a perfect trapping of the player. Looking at the cover art for Bioshock, you can clearly see that some weird stuff is going to happen in this game. But that doesn't stop the opening moments from putting us in the headspace of our lead character, even as his odd opening monologue leads into the sounds of a plane crash and we awaken underwater in a sea set aflame. Swimming up to the surface, the sound of sinking aircraft components and burning fuel slicks fill the air, but notably not the sound of screams or cries for help. It's eerily quiet and we can't see anything other than an ominous lighthouse for miles in any direction. We don't really know why we were on that plane or how it went down, but what we do know for sure now as we make our way into the lighthouse is we are the only ones that survived that crash and that this is our only place of refuge. So as warm music fills the air and bright lights clang to life, guiding us towards a small submersible craft, we jump right in and pull the lever, thinking to ourselves, well, things certainly couldn't get any worse, could they? Resident Evil was in a bit of a rut when number 7 came around, and luckily for survival horror fans, it was just what the doctor ordered. After a series of bloated and discordant games, this one gets small and personal. We're no BSAA agent after a bioweapon punching any rock that gets in our way, but rather a man simply looking to locate his wife who disappeared some years earlier. And despite the frantic message that starts the game, which is in direct conflict with the one we find in our inventory, how could we not understand a husband's search for his missing partner, especially when it's just down the road in beautiful Dulvey, Louisiana? And despite some very ominous sights as we approach her likely location, we find confirmation that she was here and that we were on the right trail. So we head into this dingy abandoned house. I mean, how could we not investigate further? Dead Space is maybe my favorite setup to a video game and perhaps the most grounded despite its far future setting. The game starts out as a seemingly simple job to re-establish contact with the USG Ishimura, a massive planet-cracking mining vessel that has recently gone silent. Our protagonist Isaac even has a romantic partner on board, so all the more reason to get to the ship and see what's going on. There's some conversation amongst our crew about how it's pretty wild a ship of this size could have possibly gone dark, some intrigue around our team lead delving into our computer specialist background.
You check your file access?
I'm a computer analyst. That comes with the job.
Both of these adding some inauspicious foreshadowing to our approach, but generally speaking, we are a crew of professionals on a routine mission. Sign me up. What could go wrong?
Gravity tethers engaged. Automated docking. Let's go.
But of course, we gotta have a video game, so things always end up going wrong.
I'm losing control. Fuck! We're off course!
And after a less than ideal landing on the Ishimura with our ship badly damaged by a faulty auto-dock procedure, we proceed into the flight lounge to greet the crew only to find no one waiting for us. We try to get some information about the state of the vessel by loading a damage report, but something trips the biohazard alarm. At first thinking it may be caused by the restart of the ventilation system, we are quickly proven wrong as grotesque blade-wielding figures start descending from the ceiling and tear one of our team apart. Dodging more creatures as we run for cover, we eventually find a weapon and start to try to make our way back to our crew. Finding them at the ship's trans station, stranded due to a mechanical failure with the transport system. Nothing that world-famous engineer Isaac Clarke can't handle, and quickly the system is back online and we are heading back to our ship to assess the damage so we can make our swift exit. Arriving at the Kellion, things seem a little too quiet, but that is quickly broken up as creatures swarm the craft and detonate the main drive core, sending Isaac flying, the Kellion into pieces, and our one easy plan for getting off this ship into shambles. We are now totally stranded on a starship, crawling with vicious monsters in the deepest depths of space. This feeling made all the more impactful by the game's opening, where we warp in to see the Ishimura sitting alone in a sea of dead rocks above a desolate planet. The communication issue we came to fix no closer to being solved. The feeling of isolation that begins to sink into the crew sinks into us as well. We were the rescue team after all. I've always loved this intro and just the general setup for Dead Space, as we didn't do anything wrong to get into this scenario. No classic horror movie bad decisions were made, and the reason we all came here is as rational as anything. Well, at least it is on the surface, but we'll get to that. The same can't really be said for Bioshock and Resident Evil 7, though I still think those sequences work very well in their own right. Bioshock is maybe the least rational of these intros, but there's still a shred of believability here. You are stranded in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean as the sole survivor of a crash, and with transatlantic flight still in its relative infancy, the thought of a quick rescue seems quite slim. So, a cozy submarine ride isn't all too wild a decision to make. And while the descent into Rapture is actually quite nice and the city quite beautiful from afar, things go wrong the second we emerge into the bathysphere station, as the man coming to retrieve us is murdered by a disfigured woman wielding glowing hooks, who then proceeds to disable our submersible before skulking off into the dark. Our way into, and perhaps only way out of the city destroyed, we have no other option than to reach out for the lifeline of the voice on the nearby radio. His name is Atlas, and he aims to keep us alive. For now, at least. It's quite the wild start to a game, but I think starting with something as violent and traumatizing as an airline crash really covers for a lot of the wild decisions you are forced to make early on. Your character, and even you a little bit, are still coming down from the adrenaline of that moment as you pull the lever in the bathysphere and begin your descent into this outlandish world. But if we did want to stay more grounded, we could look to Resident Evil 7. Now fully in wife recovery trespassing mode, Ethan Winters, the protagonist of Resident Evil 7, starts his search in the dark hallways of this very sketchy looking house. After inspecting some cooking and watching a videotape which takes place in the house we are in and shows at least one man being murdered, Ethan makes the highly questionable decision to follow in the tape's footsteps and descend into the basement in search of Mia. But hey man, that's what love does to you. And in quite the surprise, we immediately find her. Now, she's a bit scattered and insists she didn't send any messages to us.
What do you mean? You contacted me.
No, I wouldn't. Did I?
But nonetheless, we start to slowly sneak our way through an underground complex and make our getaway. But it's not long before she goes straight crazy mode and starts trying to murder us, first with a knife, then with a chainsaw, before we can seemingly snap her out of it with a few well-placed gunshots aided by our fresh stump hand. With all that taken care of, we can now just leave her to her own devices and get the hell out of here. Oh, just kidding. We get knocked out and taken into the main house by a large yellow shirt wearing fellow with a nasty right hook. Awakening in the house amongst a full dinner table of cuddly, colorful characters, the weight of our decision to pursue Mia becomes quite clear. We are hostages in a house in the middle of nowhere with a family of seemingly unkillable hosts making sure we don't go anywhere. Barbed wire and intricate locks barring our exits. It is a lot more grounded in a much smaller scale type of isolation than Dead Space's celestial dread, but I really think how small and personal it is really sells the horror of it all. After all, there's not much more relatable than an awkward dinner with the family.
Eat it. It's good.
Dumb some bitch wasn't no good if it hit him.
Now that we are stuck, we enter my favorite portion of these types of games, problem solving. This is where I really feel like these games all shine, the portions where you are simply trying to survive and find a way to somewhere safe. Back at the kitchen table, we get ourselves loose and begin trying to make our way out of the house. The only problem is, despite its outward appearance, this isn't so much a house as it is a labyrinth of ornate, overcomplicated locks, very large and specific keys to very ostentatious and oddly themed doors, shadow puzzles, mold monsters, you name it, this house has got it. In other words, it's a classic Resident Evil location, and the whole time you're exploring, there is the constant threat of Jack, the patriarch of our friends from dinner, hunting us down, seemingly unkillable despite our best efforts. The whole first act of this game in the main house is by far the strongest part of it in my opinion. Jack is a great antagonist, and his goading of Ethan with his death-defying cellular regeneration is as entertaining as it is frightening.
You're about to see someone. Fuck!
And to tie back to my original conceit, what makes this whole act work so well for me is the simplicity and the objective. Get out of the house. The house being a big part of this as well, as while it's in quite a state of disrepair, it at many times resembles a house any one of us could find ourselves in. Family photos, grandfather clocks, and other signs of a once normal life dotting the premises. Getting out of the house is easier said than done though, as collecting the items needed takes you through the manor's mold monster infested basement, its Jack infested upstairs, and through a litany of side rooms in between. With all of this exploring, puzzle solving, and fighting eventually culminating in an insane chainsaw duel with Jack in the basement to get the final item you need to unlock the back door. And after this is when the game starts to shift its objective from survival and escape onto something else entirely. And while the rest of the game is solid, and we'll touch on it later, the simplicity of the horror and of the objective makes this first act a real highlight for me. Back at the bottom of the Atlantic in Bioshock, the best parts of this game for me have always been before the big reveal with Atlas and Andrew Ryan, where the thrust of your actions is to escape the undersea dystopia. These first two acts of the game send you from district to district of Rapture, solving problems brought about by the decaying infrastructure, the omnipotent ruler, and the various psychopaths who have taken hold of each sector. There's a self-contained narrative allowed to build in each zone from your interactions with the area baddie as you attempt to move through it and closer to an escape, at first via a submarine, which doesn't go very well. And then via taking direct control of the city from the founder Andrew Ryan himself. The characters along the way, Dr. Steinman, Peach Wilkins, Sander Cohen, as well as the various minor characters brought to life through audio logs scattered about, really add a tremendous amount of color to the game's darkened corridors. And once you finally descend all the way into the heart of the city to depose of its tyrannical ruler and finally take control and escape, you are quickly undermined by Atlas, now revealed to be the boogeyman of Rapture himself, Frank Fontaine. You are then quickly thrown into a third act that has always left me wanting. You're still stuck in Rapture, but the about face from Atlas/Fontaine turns these last acts into a bit of a wild goose chase as your motivations and directions muddle into a bit of a blur.
You might find answers in Suchong's flat in Mercury Suites.
I think the way I feel my enjoyment dips in the latter portions of Bioshock and Resident Evil 7 is one of the reasons I love Dead Space so much. The direct way in which problems present themselves and then you just go and fix them really tickles my engineer brain. And all this is really improved in the remake of the game where Isaac has a voice and is given some agency.
But it's all on Isaac's side of a quarantine.
I'll handle it. Just make sure there's power to the repair systems.
As opposed to the original, where he was much more a silent errand boy for Kendra and Hammond.
Everything is on the other side of this quarantine. We can't reach it from here.
No, we can't. But you can.
Almost the entirety of the game is based around keeping the Ishimura aloft and you and your small team alive while you figure out if there is any hope of an escape. First, you go find the captain's body in the morgue to get his access codes. With these, your team can get access to the ship's systems, revealing its engines are sputtering and it's falling out of orbit. So, you just roll on into the engine room, fuel that sucker up, fire a spark into it, and get things back in action. Moving to the bridge, we start getting pelted with asteroids. Oh no, the defense cannons are offline. Well hey, let's go fix them. Bam, bam, boom, they're back online, and just in time for us to get sucked into a brief diversion with some fanatical lunatics who seem to think these zombies are the final form of human evolution?
Maybe your death
Or tip the balance?
Hey man, I think I'd rather die than live with scoliosis like that, but whatever about that nonsense. Isaac Clarke hasn't got time for that. He's got problems to solve. And guess what? We're running out of air. Just like that part in Bioshock that I didn't mention. So we pop on over to hydroponics, take care of these dudes that look like what they put on British cigarette pouches, and fire some big old glowy bit-having tentacle monster into the void to get the air flowing nice and clean again. What's next? Should we think about how all this has happened? If maybe that one crazy guy was right? Hell no. Let's fire off an SOS beacon and see if anyone comes by to say hey. And when you know it, someone does, but we can't respond. We never did fix that comms issue, so let's go fix that too. The Kellion crew never leaves a job unfinished. Blasting the array into working order and clearing some gunk from the antenna, it's time to chat with our saviors, but as it turns out, they didn't get our SOS beacon, but rather they found our escape pod. Wait, what escape pod? Oh no, that's the one with the necromorph in it that Hammond fired off. And then kapow, they slam into the Ishimura, but this girl's a tank and just shrugs it off. And honestly, them crashing is good news in a roundabout way because now we can get in there and salvage some parts for an escape shuttle that our boy Hammond found in the executive suites. And finally, we reach the part of the game where the overarching objective shifts. As we navigate the executive suites, we are convinced of two things. One, Isaac definitely is not playing with a full deck of cards, and two, maybe we have to use the shuttle to return the marker, a large alien object that is causing all of this zombification, paranoia, and general uncoolness to happen, back to the planet's surface where it came from, as this is quote-unquote the only way to stop this for sure, or whatever.
Emilia, she knew. She told me it would return the beast to its slumber.
Okay.
And while this is technically escaping the Ishimura, it's certainly the point where straight up survival takes a back seat to less obvious motivations. This point in the game happens about halfway through chapter 10, and there are only 12 chapters in the whole game. Dead Space is really a game where the majority of the time you are just trying to stay alive and get the fuck off this ship, and I think that's why I love it so much. It is really just pure survival horror. Now, as I've mentioned, I think the earlier parts of these games are head and shoulders above their latter acts, but I still do like the back ends for what they are. In Dead Space, we take the advice given to us by Dr. Kyne and bring the marker back to the planet's surface, and obviously things go wrong. Turns out Isaac is definitely a bit unwell and has been hallucinating his girlfriend Nicole the whole game. Kendra, our computer specialist, is actually a double agent who knew about the marker the whole time, and oh yeah, there's a big tentacle monster in the crater planet side. These two missions are definitely my least favorite in the game, especially the last one, which is very repetitive and a bit of a slog in both versions of the game. But the final boss fight is a pretty cool spectacle, and I do love a dark ending as we see that even though we have finally escaped the planet, we have not escaped the marker's influence. The last few missions in Bioshock amount to breaking Atlas/Fontaine's control on you and then going after him. Breaking control is easy enough, if a bit annoying, as you lose control of your plasmids for a bit during this sequence. But chasing him down is the real pain in the ass, as you have to become a big daddy to do so, which of course results in one of the worst on-screen effects to ever grace a video game that had 16:9 aspirations. Thankfully, they do get rid of it for the final fight with Atlas atop Rapture, and then of course we get the satisfaction of the good ending, because who in their right minds is harvesting all the little sisters? There's almost no point in doing it at all, you monsters. And finally, back in the bayou and outside the main house, instead of running off into the woods to a well-deserved freedom, we descend further into the compound to rescue our wife, curing her of her little outbursts along the way. This results in a decent section chasing Marguerite through the buggy old house, defeating her very upsetting spider form in the greenhouse. Then we fight through some of Lucas's sick and twisted attempts at being the next Saw, which have always fallen a bit flat in my opinion, before fighting Jack again. That's right, he's not dead. Then curing Mia, sorry Zoe, Mia's in the sequels, novel, so this is canon. Then becoming Mia, navigating a scary but not very fun trip through an abandoned tanker where the actual backstory of Mia and what happened to cause all of this is revealed to us, flashbacks and all, before we eventually rescue Ethan, send him into the action mines, and eventually back to the first house to fight an old lady who was the true mastermind all along. No wonder she kept creeping around throughout the game. And while all this stuff is solid, man does it not hold up compared to the main house sequences that anchored the game's first act. So yeah, all these games wrap up just fine, and their latter acts do have some good moments in them, but they really sing when structure's simple and objectives are clear and tangible. Escaping from an underwater Ayn Rand land, Louisiana, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Event Horizon's more interactable cousin are easy to empathize with. I would want to escape them too. What's less easy to get on board with as a player is things like returning to the Death Planet where the Necromorphs originated from, becoming a Big Daddy, which is said to be irreversible, and trusting a stranger who told you to combine a leg and an arm to make a magical serum that will cure your wife. Though, I guess she does end up being right. To be fair to Zoe, pour one out for her.
I'll send help.
Don't bother. There won't be anyone left to help!
Anyways, I love all three of these games, even after the inevitable shift in objective. And let me know what you think about whatever it is that I'm trying to say here. Do you like horror and horror-adjacent games that stay grounded in their internal logic, like these three, or ones that play with reality a bit more, like Silent Hill? Let me know down below, and thank you so much for watching.